While this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors, by following the facts and the law and doing so without fear or favor. Many voices out there. The only voice that matters is the voice of the jury, and the jury has spoken.
Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg speaking yesterday following the historic conviction of former President Donald Trump on all 34 counts in the criminal hush money trial. Trump becomes the first former U.S. president in American history to be convicted of a crime. The verdict was read just around 5 p.m. in a New York City courtroom after the 12 jurors deliberated for roughly 9.5 hours over 2 days. Each of the 34 felony counts is associated with a falsified business record pertaining to Trump's reimbursement of his former attorney and fixer Michael Cohen for a hush money payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels during the 2016 presidential campaign to keep her quiet about a sexual encounter she says she had with Trump back in 2006. Trump has denied her claim. Sentencing is set for July 11th, just 4 days before the Republican National Convention begins in Milwaukee. The maximum sentence for falsification of business records is 4 years in prison, but incarceration is not a mandatory sentence. It will be Judge Juan Merchan who ultimately decides the punishment. Along with Joe, Willie, and me, we have the host of Way Too Early, White House Bureau Chief at Politico, Jonathan Lemire, U.S. Special Correspondent for BBC News, Katty Kay, MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle, former litigator and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, former U.S. attorney and MSNBC contributor Chuck Rosenberg, and MSNBC legal analyst Danny Savalas. Good to have you all with us.
Chuck, I'm curious, your first impressions of what happened yesterday, what Americans should be looking at, what they should be focusing on as we move forward.
Yeah, it's going to be hard, I think, for our very divided country, Joe, to look at this the way I do. I mean, I think it's relatively simple. The government presented a compelling case. They adduced the facts they wanted to adduce. They called the witnesses they wanted to call. They asked them the questions they wanted to ask them. And the jury understood it. Juries often do. I mean, statistically speaking, most juries convict most of the time. And that's what happened here. But, you know, I was thinking about, believe it or not, a National Science Foundation poll, Joe, that shows that about a quarter of Americans, and this has been consistent over time, believe that the sun revolves around the earth. You know, for those of you keeping score at home, it doesn't. And so I think it's hard to convince people that what happened in New York happens routinely and regularly around the country. Juries hear the facts, they deliberate, they deliver their verdict, and we need to accept that, plain and simple.
So, Lisa Rubin, you've been covering this so closely down at the courthouse right from the beginning, giving us your analysis and sort of reading some tea leaves in the last few days. I think the prosecution hoped for, but probably didn't expect, a clean 34 for 34 sweep on every count to get convictions on those. What's your reaction to the verdict?
Willie, I was in the courtroom yesterday for the verdict, and I can tell you that just the very existence of a verdict was a huge shock to everyone there, given the fact that Judge Merchan assembled the parties at 4:15. He came in, he said that he was prepared to release the jurors at 4:30 and that he just needed to take care of a couple of things. And then he stepped off the bench, and 4:30 came and went. And at 4:36, there was just this tension all throughout the courtroom as everyone was waiting, thinking, what in the world is happening? Could we possibly have a verdict? And indeed, when he retook the bench and said, I have a note from the jury, they have a verdict, both people on both sides of me gasped audibly. You could just hear it reverberate throughout the crowd. So just the very existence of the verdict was shocking, but I think the reactions of the parties was also so telling. Former President Trump tried to put a good face on the verdict. When he walked out, you could see He set his jaw in that Trump-like way. He pursed his lips in the way we're all used to. He set his face to look ahead, and yet he looked like a man defeated and resigned. He walked slowly and lumberingly. And then once they were out of the courtroom, we, the press corps, about 100 of us, were left in there with the DA's office. I don't know if I've shared this before, but when Trump moves out into the hallway, for security purposes, everyone is frozen. And that includes the staff of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. If you were counting on them to look as if they just scored the biggest score in that office's history, you wouldn't have seen it on their faces or on Alvin Bragg's face. He looked straight ahead, and the prosecutors on his team didn't crack a single smile among them. Maybe there was a little twinge of relief in their shoulders and body language, but this was a group of people that knew that all eyes of the world would be on them in this moment if they were lucky enough to get a conviction, let alone 34 of them. And they met the moment with their seriousness of purpose. This is not a group of people, despite what Donald Trump and his Republican allies are saying, that relished this victory, that are rejoicing in it. It was a somber and sad day for America that we have now seen a former president convicted on 34 felony counts. And you could see that in all of their faces.
Gut punch to the country. Danny Ceballos, let's talk about what's next. Sentencing is July 11th. What happens between now and then, and what are the options with sentencing? And of course, I take it an appeal can't start until after that.
Yeah, probation will prepare what's called a pre-sentence investigation report. Now, that normally involves interviewing the offender to find out about the offender, but who honestly needs to interview Donald Trump to find out about his biographical details and all the other information that normally goes into a PSR. Then the sides will submit their sentencing memoranda. The Trump side will unquestionably ask for a probation-only sentence. The real question for me, what I'm really curious about, is what the DA's office asks for. Will they say, this is kind of a political decision, let's ask for probation only, we've won, let's call it a victory? Or will they ask for incarceration? I believe they will ask for an incarceration sentence in this case. The real question is what Justice Merchan will do. Now, there are plenty of arguments to be made for a probation-only sentence. Number one, this is a 71-plus-year-old offender. You have a nonviolent offense, a first-time offender, no guns, no drugs, no violence involved. And I would make an additional argument, and I think reasonable minds could disagree here, that I would say that loss, and the great Chuck Rosenberg will tell you that in fraud cases, especially in the federal system, the single biggest driver of a sentence is the dollar amount of loss. And loss is measured in many different ways. But as a defense attorney, I would argue that the loss in this case is 0.0. It's not a traditional fraud case where you have traditional victims who handed over their money. Let's say, and I'm just thinking of an example, let's say I made up a fake university and charged people fake tuition for my fake university and kept all that money. I'm just giving a hypothetical example. That might be a case where you could measure loss in terms of the number of victims multiplied by how much they paid. You don't really have that here. You could make the argument that the loss and the victims are the people of the state of New York. I get that, and I think reasonable minds could disagree. But as a defense attorney, I would be arguing that loss in this case is zero. So I think that you will see a request for a non-incarceration probation-only sentence. But I also think you're going to see the prosecutors ask for jail time.
Let me open this up to our lawyers, to Chuck, Lisa, and Danny, and just ask what happened. I mean, I must say that I said it, and I've said it here before, that in a nation where 77 million people voted for Donald Trump, I just, maybe I was being cynical, but I just thought there would be one out of 12 jurors that would have said, no, not going to go along with it. We're going to drag this thing out forever. So I was surprised by the quickness of it. I was surprised by the resounding 34 of 34. What do you all think happened in there that moved the dynamic in such a dramatic way against Donald Trump?
Who's first?
Lisa, I'll start with you.
Well, Joe, I think what happened is evidence happened. And the evidence in this case was overwhelming. You know, Todd Blanche can go on as many cable networks as he can find and say that his client was convicted solely on the word of Michael Cohen. And nothing could be further from the truth. His client was convicted largely on the words of two categories of people: his acolytes, starting with David Pecker and ending with Hope Hicks and Madeleine Westerhout, and his own words, heard by the jury in a recording that Michael Cohen made on September 6, 2016, and even including his tweets, which were consciousness of his guilt in 2018, his legal filings where he admitted that this was a reimbursement, and all of the books that he wrote proclaiming how you got to be Donald Trump. Those laid out a framework for his M.O. His M.O. was reward the people who are loyal, loyalty above all else. Don't trust anyone, even if you have the best people around you. Micromanage, 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 because at the end of the day, your checkbook belongs to you and you alone. Donald Trump was convicted because evidence happens.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we may not know for some time until we talk to jurors, but I don't think the jurors spent a lot of time parsing out each and every count. I think they looked at them as a group, and they could have done that because the facts involved with each transaction were so similar. Yes, there were minor differences. I did wonder if they might seize on the fact that Donald Trump signed some checks, but not all the checks. Or, for example, that the checks came from the Trump Organization, then they came from the trust. Those were examples of differences between these transactions. But of course, each count really could have, all these counts could have been divisible by 3 because you had a voucher related to a check, related to an invoice. So in that sense, they could have grouped those together. But unlike many financial crimes cases where the transactions are very distinct and involve very different facts, this could have been a case where they really just could have grouped all of these together and said that Trump's intent applied to all of them broadly based on the evidence they heard of Trump's involvement. And they could have arrived at this relatively quickly. Maybe we'll find out that they took a straw poll right away when they got into the jury room and there was a minority. And going to your question, Joe, you know, you're right. We often speak of it only takes one juror, but practically speaking, if you're that one of 12 and you get in that jury room and you find that, oh, I'm the only one who doesn't agree with my 11 fellow jurors, those folks, I don't think, tend to hold out for too long. I think that just mass psychology is that, well, at least I better listen to what they have to say. I'm convincible. I'm somebody with an open mind. I said I was someone with an open mind. And when you have one or two in the minority like that, I don't think it takes too long. Maybe that's why they read back the testimony to say, hey, Steve, are you convinced now? Maybe your memory is refreshed. Are you with us? And that's probably why this happened. Relatively speaking, in my view, this was a short deliberation.